cupping your left hand, oh, got it? Your left hand cupping your right hand. Your spine kind of naturally straight. Your head slightly tilted forward. Your tongue behind your upper top teeth. Your eyes slightly apart or closed if that's more better for your concentration. Your head sort of held upward like a string, as if by a string. Check the tension in your shoulders. Oftentimes people have tension in their shoulders they don't realize they're carrying. And then just bring your attention to the sensation of air passing in and out of your nostrils. And I'll be keeping the time so no one has to worry about how long it will be. It'll probably be about 5 minutes. And then if you're with a calmer mind or a more focused mind, then um, in the space in front of you, imagine there are Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and they're seated on teaching thrones, and they're engaged in the actions of um, practicing the Dharma. They're made out of light. They're dynamic in 3D, like a hologram. And surrounding you are universal living beings in the forms of humans seated on cushions. And you're guiding them in this kind of meditation exercise. You're taking responsibility to sort of guide them. And then you think, um, as long as I don't change my negative habits of body, speech, and mind, then the cycle of suffering for myself and other continues indefinitely. So, for example, um, my habits of anger manifested through body, speech, and mind. If I don't address them, then the cycle of suffering for myself and others will continue indefinitely. And then think these beings that I visualize before me, they represent breaking those habits, replacing them with other habits of body, speech, and mind that are productive in the sense that they bring benefit for self and others. So you develop a mind of trust or faith or friendship towards these figures. And this is where we would do a refuge prayer. Zungyu Churan Zogi Chunam Chanju Bordu Dani Gabzuchi Dagi Jinzogi Be Sonam Ki Jula Penjur Sangi Jubasho Zungyu Churan Zogi Chunam Chanju Bordu Dani Gabzuchi Dagi Jinzogi Be Sonam Ki Jula Penjur Sangi Jubasho Zungyu Churan Zogi Chunam Chanju Bordu Dani Gabzuchi 덕이 신속이 배선함기 주가 변주성이 주것쇼. So may I go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and by my merit generated by practicing generosity and so forth. So generosity and the other perfections of a bodhisattva, then may I become a fully aligned being for the benefit of others. And imagine a Buddha, replica of the Buddha comes, of Shakyamuni Buddha descends to the crown of your head, into the heads of all beings. And he'll just remain there as we do the rest, do a more visualization, but feel completely protected. Feel like you're capable of doing this exercise. Then in the space in front of you, imagine someone for whom you have difficult feelings towards. Maybe someone who irritates you or annoys you or makes you angry. Don't choose someone that's going to overwhelm you at this moment. Someone you can actually manage to see in front of you. And as you develop the image of that person, also check in with your own self to see how your gut feeling is when you think of that person, or your automatic feelings, your automatic thoughts, the automatic bodily sensations you have when you imagine the person in front of you. Does your chest tighten? Does your body temperature increase? Do you feel frustrated and annoyed immediately? Or does it need to ramps up? Where do your thoughts go? Do you have memories of past injustices or painful events, or just kind of check in with yourself gently? And then I'll propose just different sets of ideas to consider, and we'll see if it changes our relationship to this figure, even just ever so slightly. And I'll go through a variety because not all of them will impact everyone the same way. So to begin with and think, um, think, um, this enemy of mine, or this so-called enemy of mine, is subject to impermanence and death. They're constantly changing from moment to moment, and one day they will die. This person's changing from moment to moment. So sometimes they're, happy. Sometimes they're angry. Sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're committing injustice. Sometimes they're just having a sandwich. And then think that this person is a product of karma. So they've engaged in a variety of actions that have caused certain effects. And our experience of them is a product of our karma too. So they've engaged in actions of body, speech, and mind that have contributed to their reality. And we interact with that reality based on our own actions of body, speech, and mind. You think that this person suffers. So this person experiences the suffering of suffering, all the gross, obvious sufferings, old age, sickness, death, and so forth. They experience the suffering of change. So pleasure is in the nature of suffering. You can never sort of be comfortable. And they experience all pervasive compounding suffering. They're trapped in a cycle. Their ignorance causes them to be trapped in a cycle of suffering. Their hatred, causes them to be in a cycle of suffering. Their attachment, like neurotic attachment, causes them to be in a cycle of suffering. So think how their how it's their ignorance that causes you problems, or their hatred that causes you problems, or their attachment, neurotic attachment that causes you, their clinging that causes you problems. And how if they didn't have those minds of ignorance, hatred and attachment, how they would be different people altogether. So mm, the real enemy is the presence of ignorance in the minds of others, or hatred in the mind of others, or attachment in the mind of others. You can think this being by giving you the opportunity to practice patience and the other perfections is helping you in the long term, in an extremely long term. In fact, because bodhicitta, the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of others, um, includes this person, because this person is part of others for the benefit of others, is part of that others. So all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and other classes of holy beings, um, they're so grateful, they're so thankful, and where they cherish this being as being part of their own spiritual evolution. And if you're practicing, Tantra or the Tibetan Buddhist um, the forms of Buddhism that come out of Tibet, then you can even think, my guru, my spiritual teacher, or my main spiritual teachers who are inseparable from all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they think the same way as Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So they cherish this person. They cherish this person because they understand that this person's not always been problematic, but has, in different circumstances and different conditions, has been extremely kind and beneficial. And you're choosing to remember that kindness and to repay it. So your spiritual teachers are asking you to um, see how they're kind, to see how that person is so necessary for your spiritual path or progress on the spiritual path, and to focus on that kindness and to repay that by developing spiritually. So if you feel brave enough, then you can imagine that person uh, descending through the crown of your head and entering, uh, you know, passing the sort of third eye chakra, if you will, past the throat chakra into the heart chakra, and sitting in your heart. And if that feels like too much, you can just leave them outside of you. And then, to the best of your ability, imagine making offerings to that person. Imagine giving them everything they need to be happy. And imagine removing any kind of suffering that they have, taking it upon yourself. And then just let all this kind of imagery kind of dissolve away. And then just check in with your body and your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your body, and see how you feel. Do you feel a little more spacious, a little more tender? Has it brought up pain? Has it brought up memories? And then when you're ready, then just you open your eyes and kind of come back, to the room or sort of into your body. And we have, 20 minutes to, um, discuss, uh, what stood out to you, what you liked, what you disliked. And maybe just be aware that you're being recorded. So you don't have to disclose any personal information or anything. But how was it?
Just a quick note. Even though we're being recorded, the only face they're seeing is Michael's face. They won't see your face. So there is some anonymity there.
Mm-hmm.
I was with you all the way up until making offerings in my hot space.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to take on all the negative karma, absorb it into myself, take on all the sufferings and the hopes that actions would be changed by the relief of the suffering. But the person I was working with was Governor DeSantis, some from Florida. And I've spent a large portion of my life working with teenagers who have with sexual identity, sexual preference, gender identity. And today is the first day of school. And all the safe spaces that we set up in all the high schools and middle schools, they're all gone. All the gay straight alliances have been shut down. And they have no safe space. So when it came to offerings, the first thing that came to my mind was, so I'm going to offer you the dead bodies of teenagers committed suicide because they're no longer safe. And that's when I lost it. It was fine up to that point. And that's the whole thing about with me, with this patience, is I can get it intellectually, but how do you get rid of the heaviness, the pain of other people? Because I can handle my own, but
yeah. I'm not. I don't know the answer really, but I appreciate you bringing it up. I think for me personally, there's some sort of balance between recognizing that in one context or in a certain moments of time that injustice really could be occurring or pain really is happening, and the softness comes from the the remembering in a different context, in a different time period, that maybe they were beneficial. And from my perspective, it really is choosing to emphasize one over the other. So from a very traditional Buddhist perspective, it's, sometimes it's remembering when they were kind to you as the mother,
Okay.
taken very literally. That's what one's choosing to emphasize and remember and repay that, although there is still injustice occurring in the context you're in at the moment. And that's just a very hard balance because it'd be insanity. It would be impossible for me to say that there's not pain and injustice occurring in the present, but it's it's yeah, it's something about it kind of consciously. It's like in the past, in a different context, in a different set of circumstances, they would have been kind to me, they were kind to me, they are kind to me, but in this particular context they're not. And holding those at the same time is very
Yeah.
painful, and then choosing to be like, I'm repaying this is what I'm being kind. This other stuff is based off of hatred and ignorance and attachment. They're suffering from that. It's just a very difficult. I don't.
I know. And
I'm not being very linear. I'm not
that's
being very
okay. But
linear.
I can see what you're saying.
Mm,
And I think my problem is I've only been a Buddhist a year. And
mm,
though I can intellectually say and think that I firmly believe
mm,
that since the beginning of this time, I have been a father to mother of child of
mm,
all sentient beings. Therefore, they're all
mm,
my mothers, my children, and my fathers. But to actually feel that
mm.
takes a while.
Oh yeah, no. And in a sense, in the beginning, it's a conceptual exercise. It's just a visualization or a felt sense. You know, the theory is, if you could actually remember past lives, if you could prove it to yourself in some way, you'd have this direct knowledge.
Mhm.
So the direct knowledge, I think, would be rather convincing. I have a true
Yeah.
memory of DeSantis in this context, and this is very traditional Buddhism, right? So they, if I had that direct knowledge, it would soften in a different way. But for you and me, it's a conceptual exercise. I want to believe this. I'm trying to negotiate the idea. What would it be like if I felt this way? But it's much further along, you know, where it's like, yeah, maybe you'll get direct knowledge, and that direct knowledge would be very convincing, theoretically. But I've not experienced that,
No,
so
I can see where I would be completely
yeah.
convincing.
You're just like, oh yeah, I remember you 5,000 years ago. You were pretty nice to me. So yeah,
Okay.
it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
hmm Are there other thoughts or?
Hiya there. Just to kind of follow the theme, well, where I got lost
Mm,
was, and I was quite shocked actually. It just took me by surprise. Um, I got stuck with taking on may those, my enemies, their issues and troubles be put on me, and it
mm,
was a knee jerk reaction, but I caught
mm-hmm,
myself and like tried to transform it. Um, But yeah, that's where I got stuck. But where I felt a great release was when you just mentioned the word spaciousness. And it did
mm,
just, everything softened in me, the big blue sky and, in my mind. And it was, a really nice
mm-hmm,
space to be. and it demonstrates the more I practice how instantly my mind can be one way and consider put a few, antidotes on it really working, and your thinking can be exactly the opposite. It's quite shocking, really. But it's a relief and a release because it's working. This stuff works on magnificent scales. My life is dramatic beyond you could it. Well, it has been. It's magnificent. But yeah, these times where I get these knee-jerk reactions, like just then, ooh, I wouldn't want to be like you or that. Then I really know where I am,
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for bringing up the spacious. What we did isn't necessarily a traditional. I'm sort of weaving things together and taking and leaving things a little incomplete and stuff. And when you mentioned the spaciousness, I thought, one thing I really didn't do in that sequence, which I could have done maybe if I had more time, was to more analyze the person from the wisdom perspective. So this was pretty leaning heavily a little bit more on compassion perspective, not totally, but more. And there's something about analyzing the person that can create a kind of spaciousness. So you have a person in front of you that causes pain or an enemy or difficulty, and then if we analyze, can we find that person on the mind body complex? Can we find them on the aggregates, if you will? And where are they on their body? And if the body is always changing, then where on the body do I find them? And what part on the body do I find that enemy? And if the mind is always changing, where in the mind? And if the mind has a lot of variety, where's the person that is scaring me or is if that person is very subtle, if we find that person is very subtle, then it can also create a kind of spaciousness. Maybe there's almost not a person there. There's a person that arises out of causes and conditions. Those causes and conditions are very complex. They stretch out very far over time. Part of me is perceiving them, so it's filtered through me in a way. So part of it is illusory in a sense. And if you could see that all at once, there's almost not a person there. There's all this history, there's all this societal identity things, there's their own internal psychology, my psychology, all that interaction. And it functions because they make me sad or bring me pain, but they're almost not there when I'm thinking about it. And there's that kind of spaciousness. And the other thing I didn't really do is there's a way in which objects appear in the mind, like clouds in the mind or images in a mirror. And it's like, what if we bring our attention just to the reflective quality of the mind, that the mind, objects arise in the mind, but they also leave at some point, like clouds through the sky or an image in a mirror. The mirror of my mind is not fixed. Would that change my relationship to someone? They'll pass through. I'm not, like if you had an image of a monster in a mirror, you might be scared if you're reflecting on the image of the monster. But if you're reflecting on the mere reflective quality of the mirror itself, maybe it's not so scary. Angels will arise, monsters will arise. There's a kind of purity or a spaciousness to the mirror. I'm thinking out loud a little bit too. This isn't based on expertise. So I'm sort of just thinking out loud. But anyway, I'm glad you mentioned spaciousness, which is where this all started. Yeah, Anna.
That helped me a lot, Anna,
Mm,
when you mentioned spaciousness, because it just, you just dissolve everything into the spaciousness of emptiness
mm,
and the spaciousness of the clear light mind. And then it's sort of like expanding your heart space to
mm,
infinity. And then
mm,
everything in it just becomes, like you say, a cloud.
mm, mhm. Yeah. And
And
it,
I think within that spaciousness, it gives you the break to really analyze what you're
mm,
imprinting, which we do automatically, don't we?
mm, mm,
And maybe each time that, for me, it seems to be getting, a smaller and smaller space where I'm more quick and more quick to see
mm,
where, even in daily life, where I'm labeling, where I'm
mm.
walking into a shop, I know my attitude's gonna be like this or whatever. And it's like, I'm watching other people, they're like that, so I'm gonna be like, and there's so many different plays going on with
Mm,
ourselves, even when we're on our own, I find with
mhm,
myself. Um, but also another thought on dealing, maybe if you want to add labeling it as, say negative karma, is
mm,
the idea that, well, it's our karma, we created it. These beings are acting out our karma. Little do they know
mm,
it. Some of them,
mm,
and I apologise that you have to take that role because I have
mm,
created it. If it wasn't for
mm,
me, you wouldn't be there either. But also,
mm,
please, that karma's burnt off. I'm not going to
mm,
have to deal with it, hopefully, again.
mm,
I'm using it as a lesson, so there's a little bit of
mm,
joy there too.
mm. Yeah, so the
Release.
idea of karma was helpful for you. Yeah, yeah, taking some responsibility, letting it go. Yeah,
And
thank
Hannah,
you.
that brought something up for me too. I, when I'm able to, sometimes I think of myself as a karma trap. And so that if
Mm,
I get stolen from, I'm partially responsible for that person stealing
mm,
from me. So
mm.
like Anna says, you apologize to the, I'm sorry I made you do this. I'm sorry I gave you the opportunity to do this.
Mhm. Mm, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, Tracy did. I just want to make sure you have space if you, because we only have 5 minutes.
Yes, I'm still here. Lots of good things. I was just kind of sitting back and listening. Lots of good ideas. But I think what came to me was the part about suffering,
Mm,
because I really thought I don't want that person to suffer. And so that really helped me just to give
mm,
up on some of that stuff that I was holding on to.
mm,
And another thing that kind of came to me right in the beginning was that I truly want this person to have a human rebirth. Uh,
mm,
I don't want them to, um, become an animal. I want them to have the opportunity again to have a human rebirth. Um, so those were kinds of the things that came up for me. But I wanted to say the analogy you had about the mirror, I
mm,
really like that a lot, because it's like, okay, it's there, but I don't have to do anything about it. It's just
mm,
um, that. And then the part, like, I'm a really visual person. So the part about the cloud, like, a lot of times I go to that place where I'm just in the sky, and literally I can feel the cloud just passing through me.
mm,
And it's strange because sometimes somebody is with me there. Um, like like I've had one before where someone that I just had come in contact with and really didn't even have a conversation with, that I was in this cloud and I was holding her hand, and it was just like the cloud was passing through me. So
mm.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, that was a really good analogy that
mm,
shared. So
mm. So yeah, I like that you all have, there's certain parts of of all of Dharma that hit in different ways, right? Certain things that feel stronger than others, things that are harder than others. And I always think that's very, it's sort of nice to see because Bu- I mean, one useful thing about the way Dharma is, at least the way it's taught in the West, is that you can you choose the things that are useful and helpful and focus on those. And it's helpful to learn the variety of techniques, because when you're describing techniques to people, it's helpful to know lots of possibilities. But in the end, it's choosing the technique that works for oneself, that actually changes one within, is the right one for us. So I like that there's a lot of variety, that we can see how different we are, but we can all get relief. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying, but I just think it's very beautiful. And I think they talk about 84,000 Dharma teachings, and I think it touches on that. It's just there's a lot of variety, and figuring out what works for us is part of the process. Okay, so we just have a minute left. We'll just do a quick dedication. So we've engaged in all this activity, volunteers setting this up, and people attending, and there's lots of people that have made this possible. So it's the people in New Mexico. The only reason I'm here is because my friend contacted someone who contacted someone who contacted me. So there's more people involved than we realize, and all that energy we can dedicate. So we dedicate to the long lives of all our spiritual teachers. May we always, from our side, see the best in their qualities and never be separated from them, and work to serve them to the best of our abilities in a way that's reasonable. And dedicate that we're never separated from the path of renunciation, bodhicitta, the pure view on emptiness, and 2 stages of tantric practice. We never be separated from the teachings of Lama Zopa, and then the teachings of the other Tibetan Buddhist schools, Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu. And may all those that think about us remember, as Jima speak to us, hear voices, hear bodies speak our names, touch our bodies, like us, love us, hate us, hurt us up to the point of killing us, but in every born lower realms, always meet qualified Mahayana teachers and friends, and become Buddhists as quick as possible by virtue of our merits. May all wars, famine, fighting, quarreling instantly cease. So you think about Ukraine, but there's also conflicts all over the world. Famine in the Horn of Africa, all over. May all those things instantly cease by virtue of our merits. May all non-human beings, animals, insects, so forth, may they have every happiness, be free from every kind of suffering. May all the people that have started the process of dying or are sick, may they become instantly well, but if they can't, may they transition peacefully, become enlightened in the intermediate state, in the Bardo, and if that's not possible, be reborn human. Mahayana teachers of friends become instantly enlightened, virtue of our merit. May all the ordinary needs, mundane wishes of beings be met food, shelter, money, companionship, so forth. Their needs be met so that all their spiritual goals can be met. And if we have the opportunity to support someone's mundane or supra-mundane, their ordinary spiritual wishes, may we not hesitate to do so if we can do it reasonably. And at the very least, no matter what happens in our lives, whether we remain Buddhist or not, become Buddhist or not, may we always have a warm heart, brave, patient, kind, at the very least. Okay, so the time's 10:03 in my part of the world. Thank you very much. So nice to see you. It's nice to see you, Anna, Tracy, and Lou. Thank you so much. And I will be back next week, as far as I know. I don't even remember how many I've agreed to do. So I'll see you soon.